In World Cup history, Uruguay is one of football's most unusual giants. On a map, it is a small South American country, bordered by Brazil and Argentina, with a population far smaller than most traditional football powers. But on the field, Uruguay built a legacy that feels almost impossible for a nation of its size. It hosted and won the first FIFA World Cup in 1930, shocked Brazil in 1950 in one of the most famous matches ever played, and became a symbol of competitive pride, tactical discipline, and national identity. Uruguay's story is not just about 2 World Cup trophies. It is about the early formation of international football, the meaning of world championships before the modern World Cup era, and how one country turned football into a source of global recognition. To understand Uruguay's World Cup record, we have to start before the World Cup existed. In the 1920s, Olympic football was the closest thing to a global football championship, but earlier Olympic tournaments were limited in their international reach. Uruguay's breakthrough came in 1924, when the Olympic football tournament in Paris featured broader representation and was organized under FIFA's authority within the Olympic framework. Uruguay arrived as a relatively unknown team to many Europeans, but they played with a style that surprised observers: quick passing, technical confidence, and collective movement. They won the gold medal and announced that elite football was not only a European game. For Uruguay, 1924 became a foundational moment, one that FIFA later recognized as part of the country's World Championship heritage. Uruguay confirmed that 1924 was no accident by winning Olympic gold again in 1928. This second triumph mattered because it reinforced Uruguay's status as the dominant international team of the era. The 1928 Olympic football final was also significant because it featured 2 South American rivals, Uruguay and Argentina. Their rivalry would soon become central to the first FIFA World Cup. By the end of the 1920s, football had grown enough that FIFA wanted a tournament independent from the Olympics, with clearer rules around professional and amateur players. Uruguay, already a 2-time Olympic champion and preparing to celebrate the centenary of its constitution, became the natural host for the first World Cup in 1930. The stage was set for a new kind of global football competition. The 1930 FIFA World Cup was unlike the tournament we know today. There were no qualifiers in the modern sense, teams were invited, and travel across the Atlantic was difficult and expensive. Several European nations chose not to make the long journey to South America. Still, the tournament carried enormous importance because it was the first fully independent FIFA World Cup. Uruguay built the Estadio Centenario in Montevideo as the symbolic home of the event, and the hosts carried heavy expectations. For Uruguayans, the tournament was more than sport. It was a national celebration, a chance to prove that their Olympic dominance belonged on a truly global stage, and an opportunity to mark their country's centenary with a football triumph. Uruguay delivered. After progressing through the tournament, they faced Argentina in the 1930 final, a matchup loaded with rivalry and regional pride. Argentina led 2-1 at halftime, putting the hosts under real pressure. But Uruguay responded with the resilience that would become part of its football identity. In the second half, they turned the final around and won 4-2, becoming the first official FIFA World Cup champions. This victory gave Uruguay the Jules Rimet Trophy and placed the country at the center of football history. The win also created a lasting image of La Celeste, a team that could combine skill with competitive nerve, especially when the stakes were highest. What happened next makes Uruguay's early World Cup history even more distinctive. Uruguay did not defend its title in 1934. The decision was partly political and partly a response to what Uruguay saw as a lack of respect from Europe. Many European nations had declined to participate in the 1930 tournament in Uruguay, and when the next World Cup was held in Italy, Uruguay refused to travel. Then, in 1938, Uruguay again stayed away. South American officials had expected the tournament to alternate between Europe and South America, but FIFA awarded it to France. That decision caused anger across the region. As a result, Uruguay's first World Cup era includes a strange gap. The the first champions did not return for either of the next two tournaments. After World War II interrupted the World Cup, the tournament returned in 1950, hosted by Brazil. Uruguay came back to the competition and entered a very different football world. Brazil was the favorite, playing at home and backed by massive crowds. The final stage used a round-robin format rather than a single knockout final, but the decisive match between Brazil and Uruguay functioned like a final in everything but name. It was played at the Maracanazo in Rio de Janeiro before an enormous crowd that expected Brazil to be crowned champion. Uruguay, by contrast, entered as the outsider. The scenario seemed built for a Brazilian celebration, but Uruguay had other plans. The 1950 match became known as the Maracanazo, one of the most dramatic upsets in football history. Brazil only needed a draw to win the tournament and took a 1-0 lead early in the second half. For many inside the stadium, that goal seemed to confirm the expected outcome. But Uruguay did not collapse. Juan Alberto Schiaffino equalized, and later Alcides Guja scored the goal that made it 2-1. The silence that followed in the Maracana became legendary. Uruguay had stunned the host nation and won its second World Cup. The victory was more than a sporting result. It became a defining example of Uruguay's football mentality, calm under pressure, stubborn in adversity, and capable of overturning the biggest stage against the biggest odds. Uruguay's two World Cup titles, in 1930 and 1950, remain the core of its tournament legacy. But the country's broader record shows consistent relevance across many eras. Uruguay have qualified for 15 World Cups, reached the second round 10 times, made the semifinals 5 times, and reached the final twice, winning both finals they played. That record is remarkable because Uruguay has often competed against nations with much larger populations, deeper player pools, and bigger football economies. Its success has depended on strong domestic football culture, intense player development, and a national style that prizes commitment as much as technique. Uruguay may not dominate every generation, but it has repeatedly returned to the World Cup as a dangerous opponent. Another important part of Uruguay's story is the question of stars and titles. Uruguay often emphasizes 4 world championships, Olympic gold in 1924 and 1928, plus World Cup victories in 1930 and 1950. FIFA officially recognizes Uruguay as a 2-time FIFA World Cup champion, and the team wears 2 stars in that specific context for its World Cup titles. But Uruguay's Olympic victories carry special historical weight because they came before the World Cup existed, when FIFA organized Olympic football served as the main world-level competition. This is why Uruguay's early record can sometimes sound confusing. The distinction depends on whether we are talking strictly about FIFA World Cups, or about FIFA-organized World Football Championships before and after the World Cup was created. Uruguay's trophy cabinet also extends beyond the World Cup itself. The country has won 15 Copa America championships, making it one of the most successful national teams in South American history. In 1980, Uruguay also won the Mundialito, officially known as the World Champions Gold Cup, a special tournament hosted in Uruguay to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the first World Championship. It brought together former World Cup champions and reinforced Uruguay's connection to football's global history. When counting FIFA-recognized and major continental honors, Uruguay's total places it among the most decorated nations in the sport. This depth of success helps explain why Uruguay's identity is not built on one miracle run, but on a long tradition of winning. So why does Uruguay's World Cup story still matter? Because it challenges the idea that football greatness belongs only to the largest countries or richest systems. Uruguay helped shape international football before the World Cup, hosted and won the first edition, created one of the sport's most famous upsets in 1950, and continued to qualify and compete across generations. Its history contains triumph, protest, rivalry, national pride, and complex debates about what counts as a world championship. Above all, Uruguay represents the power of football culture. A small country turned the game into a national language, and in doing so, left a mark on the World Cup that no table of population or economics could ever predict. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.